Hi everyone, it's Maddie and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you're all doing well and having a good day. But basically today I wanted to film a quick little February reading wrap up. It is a little bit later into March than I originally planned to make this wrap up, but I figured it would still be good just to kind of go over everything I read in February, especially because a lot of it I ended up really loving, which is always a great feeling. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get straight into this wrap up. So I just counted up, and in February I read 11 novels and then 4 volumes of manga. So I'm just going to start with the first book I read throughout the month to my most recent read. So I did start off my reading month by reading House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas, which I did make a whole reading vlog for. So if you want to know any of my more spoilery, in-depth thoughts, definitely go check that out. But I am so happy to say that I really enjoyed this installment of Sarah J. Maas's Crescent City series. This novel actually made me so excited because I feel like Sarah J. Maas's writing did improve greatly from even like A Quarter Silver Flame, House of Sky and Breath. I feel like her writing has matured a lot, and some of the things that used to, I don't know, be a little bit cringy or annoy me slightly happened a lot less in Flame and Shadow, which was really nice. But besides that, a lot of super amazing, really exciting things happened in this novel. I felt like the pacing was really great. It was one thing after the next without it feeling confusing or anything. And also, I love how interconnected all of Sarah J. Maas's series are and all of the new information regarding that. It was just such a great read and a really awesome way to start off my reading month. It also makes me excited because I feel like Sarah J. Maas is such a young writer, and knowing how much she's improved over the first 15 years she's been writing, it just makes me excited to think about things she'll be able to publish and write, in 10 years, 20 years. I think she's still a great author and, someone I love reading from. So I was really happy to read this new release. It was definitely one of my top, if not my top most anticipated read of the year. So it was an awesome way to start off my reading month. The next book I ended up reading, I actually don't have my copy of, but that is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I really loved this historical fiction, and I thought my mom would really like it too, so she's actually borrowing it, so that's why I don't have my copy at the moment. But this is, like I said, a historical fiction actually taking place in the 60s and 70s, really centered around the effects of the Vietnam War. The main character of this book is 13-year-old Lenny, and it follows her family's story of her father being a Vietnam vet and, struggling a lot with post-traumatic stress syndrome and just, stresses of being in America during that time. And her family decides to move up to Alaska after this random opportunity. So it really follows Lenny's family as they are learning and struggling to actually live off the land and live in, the great Alaskan wilderness. Reading this book has got me completely obsessed with Alaska now. I've wanted to visit all 50 states my whole life, and Alaska is one of the last states I have yet to visit. And it's just got me wanting to read anything relating to Alaska. I really enjoyed this novel. I also really loved the main character, Lenny. She was a reader, and I honestly always love a good main character who's a reader because, as readers, you can really relate to them a lot of the times, I feel like. But besides that, she went through so much growth, and she was really able to come into her own, and I really loved her relationship depicted between her and her mother as well, especially all of the changes that happened with their relationship. And all in all, Kristen Hanna is my all-time favorite historical fiction writer. I'm so happy I was able to read this, and if you like historical fiction, or if you like any sort of novels that center around trying to live off the land, then I would highly recommend checking this one out. It's also a very emotional read. Most of Kristen Hanna's novels definitely follow very serious subjects and very serious things that have affected people deeply for across generations over, history. So I'm very happy I got around to this one in February. The next novel I picked up in February was Into the Wild by John Krakauer, which, as I mentioned, after finishing The Great Alone, I ended up just being really interested, even more so than I ever have been, because I really always have been, but really interested in Alaska and visiting Alaska. And this one was on my TBR, and I knew this also was relating to the Alaskan frontier, so I definitely wanted to pick it up, and I'm so glad I did. Ever since finishing this within like the first week of the month, I believe, it has not stopped crossing my mind, like pretty much once a day. I loved how this was written. It is written by a journalist. You're definitely able to tell that, even though this isn't a complete journalism piece, the research and the thought put behind compiling this whole story and this man's journey was just really impressive to me, and I really enjoyed the writing style, and it makes me want to read more from this author and from this journalist, which I actually just got another one of his books for free from a free little library a couple days ago. So I'm very excited to be reading that soon. But anyways, if you don't know, this book follows a real life story of a man named Chris McCandless who decided to leave his home after he graduated college, burn all of his money, and try to live a nomadic lifestyle across America, with Alaska being the final place he wanted to end up and be able to live off the land and everything. But unfortunately, this man was found passed away in the Alaskan wilderness under mysterious circumstances. So this really goes into depth with his whole journey and with his whole story and everyone he meets along the way on the road. And I just thought it was very interesting, very haunting, very, very well written. And as I mentioned, I haven't stopped thinking about it since I finished it. I would highly recommend this book. I think it has a lot of really interesting things to say about multiple aspects of life. And like I said, I really enjoyed the writing style. I can't wait to check out more from this author. So I think this is the part of the month when I started reading romance things around Valentine's Day. So the next book that I have to mention was actually a graphic novel, and that is Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. This is like the sweetest, cutest graphic novel series ever. It's originally a webcomic, but the 5th volume was just recently physically published. I did read it online, so that's why I don't have a physical copy, but I did read the entirety of Volume 5 all in one sitting, and like I said, it is just the sweetest coming of age story following these two boys, Nick and Charlie, who start a friendship, and follows their relationship and their budding romance and all of the struggles that they're facing with graduating high school, going to college, and all of the really good aspects of a coming of age story. My favorite part of the series, hands down, is definitely the art style. I love, love, love Alice Oseman's art style. I love the pastel color palette and just, how everything looks. I always have, ever since I started reading Heartstopper, which I actually haven't read a full-length novel from Alice Oseman. I've been dying to read Radio Silence, as well as just, her other books too. Which I do plan on doing soon, but for now I am happy to be completely caught up with the Heartstopper series, and it was such a great time reading it right around Valentine's Day. I think I read it the day before, if I'm not mistaken. It was the perfect time of year to read it as well. And if you like webcomics, if you like romance stories, I would highly recommend. I also really appreciate all of the discussions on, family relationships, having really serious, mental health conversations, and even conversations about, serious disorders and things the main characters are struggling with. I think it's very impressive when a series can discuss and shed light upon very serious topics without it being entirely too heavy or depressing, and with having an overall tone of hope and lightness to it, which I personally really like reading and I really appreciate. So yes, I love Heartstopper, and I'm glad I'm caught up. Okay, the next book I think gets the official place for my favorite book of the month, and maybe even my favorite book of the year so far. I loved this novel so, so much. It's like one of my favorites of all time now, and that is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I read this right around Valentine's Day as well, and like I said, I loved it so much. This is a standalone novel that is a part of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere and was a part of his 4 secret novel projects that he did last year. And the premise of this story basically follows the main character, Tress, and her journey to saving her true love. And it's basically The Princess Bride, but the story kind of flipped on its head, but with amazing, amazing, super interesting sci-fi fantasy elements and world building, because of course it's Brandon Sanderson and it's in the Cosmere. I loved the plot of this book. I just thought it was so much fun the whole way throughout. And I really thought that the relationship, the couple in this story was just so sweet and felt very, very genuine, and also like really gave me like the vibes of like the Nutcracker Barbie movie, which is like, you know what, it's one of my favorite. Classic Barbie movies are so good. But it just had everything that I love in like standalone fun fantasy romance novels. And I just thought it was so sweet, so charming, and also hilarious. Like, I laughed out loud multiple times while reading this book. I'm so happy I read it. It might be my favorite book of the year so far, honestly. I think I can say that it is as of right now. But yeah, definitely my favorite book of the month for sure. I'm so happy I got around to reading this one. And I just honestly feel like rereading it now after talking about it. Like, that's how much I loved it. The next novel I picked up in February was The Heart Principle by Helen Huang, which this was a really, really good adult romance novel, and I haven't read a romance novel in quite a while. Leading up to this point, I had really gotten into them and would read like one or two per month in like 2020, 2021, and then I kind of fell off of them, and I did read The Kiss Quotient by this author during that time and absolutely loved it. So I had really wanted to read the other two novels in this companion series, and this is the one my library had, so I thought it would be super fun to read it on Valentine's Day. And I thought this book was really fun as well. I think overall, like, just straight up romance books, like, don't capture my interest as much as like fantasy novels and, you know, historical fiction. But I thought this romance did a really good job about centering other things than just the main couple. You know, the main character Anna is a very, very talented violinist. She plays for the San Francisco Orchestra, but she is on a current leave, which was self-proposed because she's really struggling with her playing. And after talking with her therapist in the beginning of the book, she's realizing she's realizing throughout the novel that because of her neurodivergence, it is really affecting areas of her life, and she goes through a whole journey of trying to discover that and, you know, help herself through that and improve her life. And I thought it was really sweet. I also really enjoyed the couple of this book. I thought Kwan, the romantic interest, was really, really sweet, and I thought they worked very well together. I liked their dynamic. I thought they had chemistry. They made sense and everything. This was a great romance novel, and I definitely still plan on picking up the second book in this companion series, The Bride Test, but probably not for a while now. I had a really good time while reading it. The next book I read in February was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which this was a reread for me, and I did listen to it as an audiobook, so I don't have a physical copy to show. But this is one of my favorite books of all time, and I had never reread it, and I decided to get it on my Audible, which I'm so happy I did. This book is probably my all-time favorite, like, magical realism novel, and basically it follows this magician's competition that is disguised as a circus that only shows up at night. And it follows a huge cast of characters, and it's very whimsical, also very influenced by history and by music and literature. And I love this novel so much. I think it's very well written, and I also really enjoy how it's structured. And like I said, I think it's my favorite magical realism, and even upon rereading it, I'm just very impressed by how well it's written and how immersed I am in the story the entire time I'm reading it. This is really, really making me want to read The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which is her only other published novel, and I haven't read it yet, so I really hope to pick that up before the end of the year, hopefully sometime. But I'm very happy I got around to this rereading experience. And it also just, since it pulls so many influences from so many time periods throughout history and different cultures and places that the circus is visiting, and, you know, just from different characters, it's very, it's like this big conglomeration of interesting ideas and concepts, and I also think that the ending is really well done too. I'm very happy I got around to rereading it this month. So next up in February, I read The Woman by Kristen Hanna, which this is the fourth Kristen Hanna novel I read, and it was also one of my other highly anticipated releases for the year. This came out on February 6th, and I read it like a week or two before, or a week or two after it was published. This is also historical fiction, actually following the Vietnam War as well. The Great Alone was the only Kristen Hanna book I owned that I hadn't read yet. I had just recently picked it up at the thrift store. So that's why I ended up reading these two like together in 1 month, which I felt like worked really well anyways. But this novel follows our main character, Frankie, who is actually an army nurse during the Vietnam War. And I thought the perspective of her being actually in the army and experiencing it on the front lines was just like so well done and so heartbreaking. Um, I've read a few Kristen Hanna's historical fictions, and this is the one that really has just stuck with me and just made me consider aspects of war and history in a different way than I have before, which I think is just incredible. I also thought that Frankie's journey after coming home was the best part of the novel, and I think it's something that a lot of people could honestly find solace in or could find, help in because the main character has a whole entire arc, and, because of everything she experienced in the war, it affects her deeply, obviously, in her life after the war and in the decisions she makes and the guilt she feels and her emotions and her daily life. And I thought it was so impactful. I thought it was very well done. And I also really enjoyed all of the conversations on politics during this time that this book went into. I think Kristen Hanna is a masterful writer, a masterful historical fiction writer. And like I said, I'm going to be reading her entire backlist, but I think for now, this is my favorite of hers. I definitely cried multiple times throughout. Like I said, all of her novels are very emotional. If you're sensitive to any content, maybe even like check that out before reading something by her. But I love her novels. They're so well done. And I'm very, very happy I got around to this book when month it was published as well. And also, I just think this is like a really beautiful copy too. And if you happen to be interested in this time period, then I feel like you absolutely have to read this novel. It was just so, so good. So next, throughout the month, I read Persuasion by Jane Austen, which this was definitely my most surprising read of the month. I was expecting to really like it because I did really enjoy Pride and Prejudice when I read it 4 years ago. But this just took me so much by surprise on how much I actually loved it. And it's gotten me really interested in rereading Pride and Prejudice and also reading Jane Austen's other novels as well because I thought this was so good. Basically, this is just a classic British novel following our main character, Anne Elliot, after a decision she makes regarding a proposal. And she makes this decision because she's persuaded by someone important in her life to do so. And it really affects a lot of things and affects a lot of Anne Elliot's thoughts. And this person does come into her life 8 years later after rejecting their proposal. And that's kind of where this novel really takes off. I love Jane Austen's writing style. I think her wit and her banter is honestly unmatched. And because I took a British literature course last semester, I feel like I really understood a lot of the context for like British culture and different, jokes that were being made and different things versus the city and country that I didn't realize before. And just with like different things in British society as well. But besides that, I just really enjoyed my time while reading this. I think it talked a lot about the contradictions in British society at the time, especially regarding class and wealth. And I loved it. I really want to reread Pride and Prejudice, and I also really want to watch the movie adaptation of this. There's one that came out last year, actually, and then one that's been out for a while. So maybe I'll even watch both because I liked it that much. But yes, I'm very happy that I finally got around to this classic in February. All right, and then the last thing in February that I read that was not a volume of manga was First Person Singular by Haruki Murakami, which this is actually a collection of 8 different short stories by him, all told in the first person perspective. Most of them are from an unnamed narrator, but some of them are actually from Haruki Murakami's perspective. He is the first person narrator in a couple of the short stories. But anyways, I loved this collection. Once again, like I said, I had a great reading month in February. I feel like it's been mostly me saying how much I've been loving everything, but you know, I guess that's not a bad thing, but I hope I'm just not being too repetitive. Haruki Murakami is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I'm really happy I got this from the library. Since it's a short story collection, I'm not gonna like go into like what any of them are about, but I guess I'll name like my favorites from the 8. I really enjoyed Cream and Confessions of a Shinagawa Monkey, and also the last short story is called First Person Singular, and I also really enjoyed that one as well. What I really appreciate about these short stories is Murakami does not shy away from being very honest in his writing, and he doesn't let any outside influence affect his writing either. That's just the impression that it gives me. I also love how much music plays a role in most of his novels, but in this short story collection as well, and how music affects his characters too. I really appreciate whenever he writes about that. And like I said, I just feel like his writing is very, very honest, and that's the main quality that seems to come to mind when I think about his writing style. I can't wait to pick up more from this author and to also just pick up more short story collections. I'm a huge, huge, huge short story fan, so I love picking up collections. So I was really, really happy to get to this one last month. Alrighty, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly was the 4 volumes of manga that I read in February, which I usually read a lot more manga. I'm very surprised I only got around to 4 volumes, but anyways, that was the first 4 volumes of My Hero Academia by Kohei Horikoshi, which I'm very, very happy I am finally getting around to this series. I've known about it for quite a while now, and I've just been having a great time. It's been a super fun manga. It reminds me a lot of the movie Sky High, which I think I mentioned in my March TBR I just made. But I just love the school setting. I think all of the different superhero abilities are so much fun to read about. I think the art style's a lot of fun too. I love the little jokes that the mangaka writes throughout the chapters as well, especially at the end of the chapters with his little character bios that he does. But yeah, I've been having a great time with My Hero Academia. I wish I did get to more volumes than just the first 4, but I thought the first 4 were awesome. I love the competition that was featured in the last volume as well. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was actually everything that I ended up reading in February. As I mentioned a couple times, I loved everything I read. I felt like I had a fantastic reading month, so I'm super happy about that. But definitely comment down below some of your favorite things that you read in February. I would love to know, or even some things that you're looking forward to reading in March. But thank you all so, so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, especially because you've made it this far. That is just so kind. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye!